So welcome everyone. Good to have you here. Also, as usual, welcome to everyone listening to this online. Now, today we have another question from Peter. And the question is, how does the scheme contact plus feeling plus craving relate to the 5 khandas? So that's a little bit of a technical question. Maybe just shortly explain the background. The 5 khandas are basically, you can say, what we consist of. The body and the mind, in short. They can be divided up into 5 different streams or 5 different functions or parts. You can imagine it a little bit like 5 rivers. So the first one is so-called Rupa Khanda, which is the aggregate khanda, which means like a heap or an aggregate. It's just an aggregate of form of matter. That's basically what it is, matter. Then you have the remaining 4, they are all the mind. So you have feeling, you have perception, you have fabrication, and you have consciousness. So these 4 are the ones that are left over. These are the 5 khandas. So when these 5 khandas, when these 5 rivers flow together into one river, then you have what we can attach to as a person. We can feel as if this is a me. So this is what we usually feel when we speak about me, this body or this mind. To make it a bit more simple, you can, for example, identify with the body. You can feel like I am this body, or this body is mine, or I'm in the body, or the body is in me. These 4 ways of identifying with something. You can also identify with the mind, with feelings, with perceptions. You can identify with thought formations, with motivation, with emotional complexes and past and future making and all that kind of stuff. You can identify with consciousness even. All these kind of things can be identified with. Now usually how do we experience the 5 khandas is very, very difficult, and I have no qualification to talk about any experience of the 5 khandas individually, but you can experience them as body and mind. So you can experience these 5 khandas as coming together in one river. Then it's very difficult to separate the water. You can then not say anymore, this is that water and this is that water over there. So I cannot do that. So all these 5 khandas being together, they interact with one another, they play with one another and so forth. The Buddha gave these 5 khandas as a means of reflection, of contemplating our existence, contemplating presence basically, contemplating what is. Contemplating the 5 khandas doesn't mean that we're contemplating anything that will be or was. There's always something you contemplate that is right now, right here. For example, you can experience the body right now, right here. Or you might experience a process of perception. That you know, for example, what is what. You might hear a bird outside and you identify it immediately as the sound of a bird. It's not that you don't know what it is. You know what it is. It's perception. You have learned what it is. Therefore, it's sometimes also translated as memory. You can also experience feeling, Vedana, which basically is the kind of taste that the mind assigns to a sense experience. You hear the sound of the bird and it feels pleasant. You like it. It's a nice sound. It appears to you. And that is very individual. Everyone experiences sounds differently. You might hear a motorbike and you feel, if you're a fan of motorbikes, you feel, wow, I love that motorbike. Or you might feel like, oh gosh, another one of these noisy motorbikes. So the sound, the taste of the sound, that is what feeling is. The way it tastes, the way your sense experiences is tasting, that is made in the mind. And you can actually observe that, this kind of process. You can isolate it a little bit and then observe just that process. Just paying more attention to that process. It's very difficult to completely isolate only that one process because it is dependent on so many other factors. For example, the body picking up the sound and so forth. But actually you can observe the process from time to time that you are feeling something about a sense experience. Something is happening. Someone is talking with you and you don't feel good about what they say. There's a negative sensation that arises. You might have a positive one also, or a neutral one, nothing much going on, neither positive nor negative. Then there is the aggregate of fabrication, which is a bit like thinking. It's most of the stuff that the mind fabricates, that the mind concocts. The Buddha calls it like this. This is the mind, what the mind is brewing up, what it is cooking up. The mind is cooking up a whole lot of stuff. You hear the bird, you don't like it, you start making a story about it. I wish that the bird was gone. Why are there so many birds? It's all that noise all the time. I'd rather prefer not hearing the birds. I want to hear city noise. I like city noise. Maybe you like city noise. Maybe that's the case. It's probably more rare, but some people might like city noise more than birds. So then this kind of story goes on. You start to remember back in the city when I heard all the cars, it was much nicer. And now I have to sit here and listen to the birds. It might be the other way around too. So you start making up stories, then you have a motivation, and you want to go back, you have an intention, all that comes into fabrication. The mind is spinning up stories, it's making stuff, it's creating stuff, and it does that a whole day long anyways. It's easy to observe. And the last aggregate is the aggregate of consciousness, which is simply the fact that there is a sense awareness, that you are aware of what comes to you. So you're aware, there is an awareness that picks up on sound. So for example, consciousness can connect to your ear. It makes it possible for you to pick up a sound. But if it is not at your ear, it is, for example, you are very intensely, you're smelling a flower right now, someone might be talking to you, the ears are picking up sound, but there's no consciousness of it. Your eardrums would vibrate, but you're not picking it up, you're not really understanding what's going on, because you're so, most of the consciousness is in your nose, it's with the smell. It's a function of consciousness. Consciousness connects to all the six senses. It connects to the mind, the mental objects, it connects to your ears, the nose, the tongue, the eyes, the ears, and tactile sensation. And so all these khandas, they're continuously in motion. They connect with one another. As I said, it's like 5 rivers coming together. It's very hard to separate them. You cannot say this water belongs to that river and that water belongs to this river. Okay, this is just a short introduction about the khandas. 5 heaps, 5 things that make up a person. And so Peter's question is, how does the scheme of contact, feeling, and craving relate to those 5 khandas? So there is a scheme here. And that scheme is very important to understand. Not intellectually, but directly. It's again something that you can observe within yourself right now in this moment. So the first step, this is like a scheme that shows how does it happen for us to suffer? How do we suffer? How do we actually manage to suffer life? How do we do it? This is kind of the mechanics of suffering, okay? So the first step, the first stepping stone on the path to suffering is contact. And what contact is when your sense and its object, for example, your ear and a sound, meet with the corresponding consciousness, the ear consciousness. So then we call that hearing. Okay? I always want to, I know this is very technical today and very complex kind of question. So let's just call it hearing for the sake of keeping it practical. This is hearing. So there's one sense experience. That is called contact, because these 3 elements come together for the experience of hearing to arise. Same, of course, for your eyes, for your nose, when you're feeling something, and when you're thinking about something. Now that is the first step. That has to happen first. The contact. An experience has to contact you. Okay? Once that has happened, feeling arises. And that goes extremely fast. I can even say simultaneously. You hear something and it immediately gets a taste. You see something and it immediately has a taste. You're just driving down the road, minding your business, just happy. Suddenly someone flips the finger at you. You just see the finger and it immediately feels negative. Doesn't it? It's just how it works. It's very fast. It's seeing, feeling, immediately. So this is kind of the second stepping stone, isn't it? Feeling. After contact, it means after something has contacted you, some experience, the mind immediately feels it in a very specific way, in a conditioned way, the way it has learned to feel it. You have learned that when someone shows you their middle finger, that means a bad thing. And then it's supposed to feel bad about that. So when you see it the next time, you cannot help but to feel bad about it. You can say, you're an expert at this particular learning. You have learned something really well. So it doesn't take long for you to realize that particular feeling. You don't have to learn it. For someone showing you the middle finger, you don't have to ask yourself, what am I supposed to feel here? Is this bad or good? You instinctively, directly feel something. Someone turning on a chainsaw out there. Just imagine someone turning on a chainsaw right now. It's a sound. It's just sound. It's just vibration in the air. But it feels a certain way, doesn't it? It feels negative. Unless you like chainsaw sounds, then it might feel positive. But either way, it feels a certain way for you. Maybe sitting in this room. Maybe you hear me talk and you're totally confused. What is he talking about? The 5 khandas, this fabrication, what? Confusion has arisen. And how does it feel like to be confused? Good, bad, neutral? There you go. It's very simple. Very simple. It needs to be practical, always these kind of teachings. The Buddha always has pointed to something, not for the sake of confusing the heck out of you, and you need a lot of books to understand it. It is now. It is something that you, right now, everyone that is sitting here is experiencing. You experience contact and feeling right now. Maybe you feel your body. Maybe you see something, you're irritated. Maybe you're waiting. It's a mental object, waiting. Waiting has arisen in the mind. What will Tobi say next? How does it feel like to wait? Is it more neutral? Is it more negative? Is it more positive? It's like every experience that visits you, every guest that you get every moment feels a certain way. That is Vedana, this is feeling. Okay, this is the second stepping stone towards suffering. Third, there's craving. Now obviously when you're feeling negative, then you start to resist your experience. First, the sound of the chainsaw. Then secondly, immediately after, almost simultaneously, same time, negative sensation. It colors the sound in a negative way. Even though the sound itself is just sound, feeling makes it look like bad sound. It's very fast. It's just sound. Bad sound. We're already at feeling. Now 3, how do I get rid of it? Now maybe that's already a bit too far, but the craving is an energetic resistance against what is. You're pushing against it mentally. There's just the feeling of contracting around it or pushing it out, wanting to get rid of. The so-called craving for non-existence. You don't want that to exist. Or you don't want to exist like this, with a chainsaw in your garden. Okay? So that is craving. Now you're resisting what is. Now that is the birth of suffering. That's where suffering starts. It's the direct cause of suffering. That resistance in itself is already unpleasant. And this is something the mind it has a continuous habit to resist what is. And some way or another. That manifests as a continuous searching. Always searching for something. Have you noticed? You might just sit somewhere and then you start searching. You need to entertain yourself maybe. You're searching for some more entertainment. But just sitting around there, like maybe you're in a shopping mall or something, without ordering a cup of coffee or without looking at people who are walking by, just sitting and just keeping your attention with yourself, is very difficult. Due to the mental habit of evading this moment continuously, just going out of now to something seemingly better, which is soon to come. Promise. Soon, it'll all be better. Just a few moments more, just a bit deeper, just a bit longer, just a bit more. It's always looking for more. That is a manifestation that comes out of this craving, resisting the moment. There's not only this direct craving towards negativity to go away, there's also another type of craving, the craving for a positive sensation. Let's say it's not a chainsaw, but it is a beautiful choir singing outside, a beautiful tune, your favorite song. You like the sound has arisen, feeling arises, feels like a nice choir, nice sound, and then liking arises. You want it to stay, you want it to continue. You might even want to turn up the volume, make it louder. That's the other side of the coin. It's basically the same thing. It's a cause of suffering. You're not accepting the moment. You either want to enhance it, or you want to hold it or own it, or you want to push it out and get rid of it. Both is stressful. Both types of craving are stressful. Liking, not liking. Here is where the stress starts. Liking and not liking. We're not anymore aware. We're now starting to get lost. It's going downhill already. After liking and not liking, we usually then quickly go into action. We're creating something. We're either yelling at the chainsaw guy, or we're going out to invite the choir to come inside, and so things start to develop out of that. And the problem with liking and disliking is that we always want to experience only the happy things in life, but not the bad things. But you cannot separate them. It's impossible. You cannot separate the happy stuff from the unhappy stuff. Just like you cannot separate holidays from work. It doesn't make any sense. If you're unemployed, you cannot talk about having a holiday. You're unemployed. You're not working. It's not a real holiday. It's unemployment, isn't it? Or like a preschool kid talking about having a holiday or something like that. You have to work in order to say that this is all. I'm on a holiday right now, enjoying my vacations. Only due to illness do we value health.
Only due to things going wrong do we actually understand how nice it is when things go right. Only due to bad views, to having a contrast, we can enjoy a nice view. You cannot separate good from bad. It's impossible. And furthermore, they're always developing into each other. My favorite example is your posture right now. If you're not moving your body, it continuously gets worse. Up to a pinnacle, to a point where it's so bad that you change your posture. Now seeming relief, fantastic, the end of all your problems. But no, it's just the beginning of the next problem. You soon have to change again. And then it will develop again to a peak point, and then you have to change again, and again, and again, and this is endless. Life is just like that. It's just like sitting. It's never just right. And if it is just right, only short. Then the just rightness turns into just the next problem. It's like this river, wave after wave. And that's okay, life is just like that. But with craving, when craving settles in, then what we do is we are suffering the way it is. We are not aware of the way it is. That's a function of craving. It turns you into a sufferer of life. It doesn't turn you, it turns you into a sufferer of life. That's what craving does. So now how does that relate to the 5 khandas? Well, obviously, feeling is the second khanda. I think it's the second one, Vedana. Feeling. And so, contact is a mixture between the aggregate of consciousness, the aggregate of form, matter. So consciousness is connecting with matter. Just like the cat is connecting to the hand. Yeah. So this contact means a consciousness, and you can listen to that again later on SoundCloud. If it's too fast for you, maybe now. Contact means consciousness connecting with the sense organ, with the sense object. These 3 elements come together. That is contact. So the sense organ is rupa, it's the body. It's the first aggregate. Consciousness is the 5th aggregate. And they interact, they play with each other. Then the second aggregate is then feeling. That comes into play then. After these 2 have connected, feeling comes into play. And it colors that experience. It makes it either look good, bad, or neutral. And then after that, craving comes into play. Craving would be aggregate of fabrication. The mind fabricates a resistance against what is. But it is not only just that simple. As I said, it's a mixture. Also, craving is also felt. Again, craving then leads to another form of contact. It leads to another form of feeling. It just is endless, and it's really complicated. So, I don't really see much point in kind of separating all these parts and trying to explain which one comes first and then second and so, because it's just like wind. Why separate wind in different parts? It's just continuously moving. So maybe it is important to keep it very practical. And the practice concerning this particular topic would be to train your mindfulness with the 6 senses. For example, learning to receive sound at the level of contact. So just hear. There's in fact even a sutra, a discourse of the Buddha, where the Buddha talks precisely like this. He says, when hearing, just hear. And it means hearing without thinking. Just hear. Just stay at the level of contact. Don't even resist it. You're not going into craving. You're not making anything out of it. You just hear. There's just sound happening. Will that work? No, it will not work. It goes like step by step. First, the way it will probably be is like you will notice a sound coming, you will notice that it makes you feel really annoyed, and that you feel the annoyance in your body. That goes very fast. But your mindfulness is already there to see that this is fantastic. This is amazing. For most people on this planet, there is no mindfulness ever. Even when they do their last breath, they don't know themselves even just one bit. This is a very rare thing. To actually turn your eyes back onto yourself and really see what is going on inside of yourself, how you make yourself suffer, that is a very rare thing. And this is fantastic. Meaning you wake up, you start to see your sleepy eyes open. That should be celebrated. You can be really happy about yourself. Each time you notice that you've been distracted, that is a beginning of mindfulness. Great. Each time you notice that you've been completely lost in a story while sitting with someone, having a cup of coffee, you were totally lost in your own story. You didn't even hear what the other person just said. But you know it. You wake up to it. Amazing. This is fantastic. It gives you a lot of power, actually. There is a lot of power in awareness, a lot of power in mindfulness. It gives you a certain degree of choice, actually. For example, it's not that anger comes into your being and then you're totally overrun by it, and then you're forced to act it out for half an hour, and then after the half an hour you go into the next thing, regretting what you've just said, feeling terrible for the next few weeks about, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. All that is unnecessary. If you would just notice that anger is now arising, and you could step back at that very moment. So there's already feeling, contact has already arisen. And it feels nasty because it's anger, it feels like burning, it doesn't feel good. But you see it. And that's where it stops. You're not creating further problems out of that. Suffering enters your being and dissolves right there. There is suffering because we contract around something. This is the function of craving. It contracts around something. That is how you know that you are craving, because you feel pain, you feel unpleasant. That's a clear indication that you are craving. A life goes up around you, you feel happy. Life goes down, you feel unhappy. Craving. And that's okay. It's not about getting rid of craving, it is about seeing it clearly. It's sometimes when I give these kind of talks, many people go out of these talks and they feel like, oh, craving is the bad boy. I need to kill the bad boy. I need to get rid of craving now. How do I get rid of craving? That you don't get rid of it. You see it. Make it known. That's the antidote. Whatever it is, there's not much to do, and there's nothing to do really. There's a lot to see. And the seeing itself is the way out. Awareness, mindfulness, wakefulness is the way out. Seeing clearly. So sometimes Buddhist studies can feel quite overwhelming if you go into all these details, and wow, there's so much that I have absolutely no clue about, that I have no qualification to talk about at all. So I tend to keep it very, very simple and practical, to just stay in this moment and let go of thinking. Your degree of thoughtlessness, of absence of thought, that's the key. You can be here and you're totally empty, and at the same time totally full. That's the key. And in that acute presence, you start seeing the way it is very clearly. And then it's not just some theory. In fact, books don't even come close. It's like a description of honey if you've never tasted it. You can read as many books as you want about it, as many definitions and so forth. But in the end, it's the taste, and it's always different. Not as you've expected. So the real spiritual practice happens when your thinking ends and you're fully, acutely aware, clear, sharp, open, spacious, right now, allowing for this moment to be. So that's kind of all that comes to mind for today. Thank you very much for coming.